close your eyes for a moment. Not tightly, just gently, so the lids rest soft and let the darkness settle in. Imagine a night that has already stretched long and deep, where the air is still warm from the day's sun, but there is a coolness just starting to creep up from the earth. You are not in your own time now. You are drifting slowly, like a boat untied from the dock, and the water is dark and glassy. Let the familiar sounds of your room fade away, the hum of a refrigerator, the distant traffic, the whisper of your own breath. There is no haste here. There is only the quiet and the story that comes to meet you. We are going somewhere ancient, somewhere the stars hang a little brighter because there are no lights to dim them. Somewhere the air smells of dry grass, of sun-baked stone, of the faint, dusty perfume of olive leaves. We are going to Greece, not the Greece of marble columns and whitewashed temples, not the Greece of philosophers arguing in the agora or triremes cutting through the Aegean, but a different Greece, a Greece of the hillsides and the small, stubborn fields, a Greece of farmers. These were the people who did not write the histories. They did not carve their names into stone or debate the nature of the soul in the shade of a stoa. They got up before the sun, when the night was still a deep violet, and the first birds were just beginning to wonder if it was worth stirring. They walked out into fields that were dusty or muddy or stony, depending on the season and the whim of the sky. They depended on a pair of oxen or a donkey or their own 2 hands. They depended on rain that did not always come, on heat that sometimes lingered too long, on the slow, patient turning of the year. And you are going to meet them here in this quiet space. But first, let us settle. Let the thought of a faraway place sink into you like the last light of a candle when the wick is low. There is no rush to arrive. The farmers of ancient Greece have been waiting for thousands of years. They will wait a moment longer. Picture a valley. It is late summer. The hills are golden, not with the gold of ripe wheat, but with the gold of grass that has dried and gone to seed. The cicadas are buzzing in a steady, unceasing drone that seems to come from the earth itself, a vibration that pulses through the soles of your feet if you stand still enough. The sun is not a sharp, white ball in the sky, but a heavy, yellow weight that presses down on everything. The olive trees are silver green, their leaves turning and flashing in any breath of wind, but there is hardly a breath of wind today. The air is thick, still, and it tastes of dust and time. This is the world that an ancient Greek farmer knew on a hot afternoon in August. He would be sitting in the shade of a stone wall, if he had one, or under the crooked branches of an old fig tree. He would have a piece of bread in his hand, hard and coarse, and perhaps a few olives, black and wrinkled from the brine. He would dip the bread in a little oil from the last pressing, a green gold liquid that tasted of the hillside itself. And he would look out at his field, at the small patch of barley that was turning a pale, brittle yellow, at the vines that curled along the ground, at the beans that seemed to be holding their heads low as if in prayer. He would be thinking about the rain, or rather, he would be thinking about the lack of rain. Because in Greece, rain is not something you take for granted. is not a background fact, a thing that happens every few days and you grumble about when it spoils a picnic. No, rain in the ancient Mediterranean was an actor, a character in the drama of survival. It had a timing and a temperament. If it came too early, the seeds might rot. If it came too late, the seedlings might wither. If it did not come at all, well, then a man would be looking at an empty storehouse come winter, and he would be counting the months until the next harvest. And there is nothing quite so desperate as a farmer counting months on his fingers. Now, you might think that the ancient Greeks, surrounded by the sea and the sun, had it easy. You might imagine that the climate was gentle, that the earth was generous, that life on a small farm was bucolic and mild. But the truth is more interesting and more gentle to share on a night like this. The climate of Greece is a Mediterranean one, which means summers are hot and dry, and they last a long time. The rains come in the winter, and they come in fits and starts. A farmer's whole year hinged on the question of how much water would fall between October and March, and whether it would fall at the right time. Think of the seasons as a slow, patient dance. In the autumn, after the first rains had softened the hard, cracked earth, the farmer would go out with his plow. This plow was a simple thing, a crooked branch of hardwood tipped with iron, pulled by a pair of oxen that knew the field as well as he did. The plow would scratch a shallow furrow, not turning the soil over the way a modern tractor might, but just opening it enough to receive the seed. The farmer would walk behind, scattering the seed from a basket, his arm moving in a rhythm that was as old as agriculture itself. He would pray to Demeter, the goddess of the grain, or to Zeus, who held the rain in his hand, or to the local nymph of the spring, the one whose water kept the village alive. And then he would wait. Winter would come, and the rains would fall. The hillsides would turn a sudden, brilliant green, as if someone had thrown a blanket over them overnight. The streams would run full and fast. Barley would push up from the soil, a blade of bright green that seemed almost to glow in the gray light. The farmer would watch it every day, walking the edge of his field, checking for weeds, for insects, for any sign that something was wrong. He would clear the ditches that channeled water from the winter rains into the roots. He would thin the vines, cutting away excess branches so that the grapes would grow fat and sweet. Then would come the spring. The days would lengthen. The sun would rise a little earlier, a little warmer. The green of the hills would begin to fade, slowly at first, then more quickly, as the moisture was drawn out of the earth. The farmer would watch the sky. He would feel the air. He would look at the signs that his ancestors had taught him, the behavior of birds, the shape of clouds, the way the dew settled on the leaves in the morning. If the rains held off through April and into May, the barley would begin to ripen, the heads bending low with grain. But if the spring was dry, if the Etesian winds came early, blowing from the north, bringing not rain, but only heat and dust, then the farmer had a problem. Then the grain would stop growing. It would turn pale and thin. The heads would be light, the kernels small. The olive trees, which are tough and resilient, would shed their unripe fruit as if to say, "Not this year." The vines, those ancient and patient plants, would shut down, curling their leaves inward to conserve every drop of moisture. And the farmer would look at his fields and know that he might not have enough to last the winter. This is the backdrop of our story, not a tale of disaster, for the Greek farmers were not perpetual victims of their climate. They were survivors. They were clever. They had learned, over centuries of trial and error, how to work with the heat and the drought, how to coax food from a land that was often stingy. Their survival was not a matter of grand engineering or heroic feats. It was a matter of small, patient adjustments, of observing the world and adapting to it, of doing 1,000 little things right. Take the matter of terracing. If you walk through the Greek countryside today, or even if you just look at photographs, you will see the hillsides laid out in steps, like giant staircases carved into the rock. These terraces are ancient. They are low stone walls, carefully built, that catch the soil and hold it in place. On a steep slope, the rain would otherwise wash the topsoil away, carrying it down into the valleys and leaving only bare rock behind. But a terrace catches the water. It holds it on each level, giving it time to sink in, to seep down to the roots. The stones also absorb heat during the day and release it at night, creating a microclimate that is a little warmer, a little more protected. Building a terrace was not a one-year job. It was a work of decades. A farmer might start a terrace with his father and finish it with his son, and the wall would stand for generations, holding the hillside together like a long, slow handshake. Then there was the choice of crops. The ancient Greeks did not try to grow the same things that grew in the cool, wet north of Europe. They did not plant big fields of wheat that needed constant moisture. They grew barley, which is tougher, more drought-resistant, able to survive on less. Barley bread was the staple of the ancient diet. It was heavy and coarse, and it went stale quickly, but it would fill a belly. They grew beans, lentils, chickpeas, which fix nitrogen in the soil and can soldier through dry spells. They grew grapes, which have deep roots that can reach down to find water far below the surface. They grew olives, which are perhaps the most patient of all trees, able to survive a year of drought by simply going dormant, waiting for the rain to return. And they grew figs and pomegranates and almonds. They kept sheep and goats, animals that can browse on scrubby hillsides that would starve a cow. They did not fight the land. They listened to it. There is a story, or perhaps just a memory, that comes down to us from the poet Hesiod, who lived sometime around 700 BC. Hesiod wrote a poem called Works and Days, which is part farming manual, part mythology, part advice to a lazy brother. In it, he describes the farmer's year month by month, task by task. He tells you when to plow, when to harvest, when to prune the vines. He tells you to watch for the rising of the Pleiades, the 7 sisters, which signal the start of the sailing season, but also the time for the harvest. He tells you to keep your tools sharp, your oxen well fed, your dog mean enough to scare off thieves. But Hesiod also writes about the harshness of the life. He describes the winter, when the north wind blows and the frost comes, and the farmer must wrap himself in a cloak of goat skin and huddle by the fire. He describes the summer when the sun beats down and the thistle blooms, and the farmer rests in the shade of a rock. He warns that the gods have hidden the means of life from men, that we must work for our bread, that the earth does not give up her fruit easily. And in the middle of this practical advice, Hesiod drops a line that has stayed with me, a little gem of observation. He says that when the heat of summer comes, the women become more amorous, and the men become less so. It is a small, human, slightly humorous detail, and it reminds us that the ancient farmers were not just toiling machines. They were people, with bodies and moods and seasons of their own. So let us linger on that image for a moment. A man, sunburned and sweating, sitting under a fig tree, his wife bringing him a cup of watered wine, the air heavy with the scent of oregano and the sound of cicadas. He is tired. His back aches from the plowing. His hands are calloused. His mind is full of worries about the rain that has not come. But he is also alive and present, and the wine is cool on his tongue. He looks out at his field of barley, which is not as full as he hoped, and he thinks about the winter to come. He will have to be careful. He will have to ration the grain, to mix it with beans and acorns, to stretch the olive oil with water. But he has been through hard years before. So has his father and his grandfather. They survived. And that is the quiet miracle of the ancient Greek farmer. Not that they thrived, for many did not. Not that they were always comfortable, for they were not. But that they persisted. They found ways to live in a land that was beautiful and brutal, that gave generously in good years and stingily in bad. They learned to store water in cisterns, to build wells, to channel springs. They learned to plant their crops on the north-facing slopes, where the sun was less intense. They learned to let the land lie fallow every other year, to give the soil a chance to recover. They learned to pray, not with desperate shouts, but with quiet, daily rituals, pouring a little oil on a stone, scattering a few grains of barley, acknowledging that there were forces larger than them. And they learned to wait. Waiting is a skill we have largely forgotten. In our world, we tap a screen and a delivery arrives. We turn a dial and the temperature adjusts. We have forgotten how to watch the sky and read its moods, how to feel the dampness of the soil between our fingers and know whether it is enough. But the Greek farmer lived in a slower time. He waited for the rain. He waited for the grain to ripen. He waited for the olive harvest, which comes late in the autumn after the first frosts, when the fruit is black and bruised and ready to yield its oil. He waited and he worked and he hoped. Now, as you lie here in the dark, let that image settle into you. The sense of a life measured not in minutes, but in seasons. The feel of dry earth under your feet and the taste of dust on your lips. The sound of a donkey braying in the distance and the low murmur of a man talking to his oxen. This is where we begin. This is the world we will explore. In the coming scenes, we will walk with the farmer through a drought, when the springs dry up and the wells go low. We will follow him into the hills to find water, and to the market to barter for grain. We will see how the village comes together, sharing what little they have, and how the old stories remind them that they have survived worse. We will taste the bread, the olive oil, the wine that is sometimes vinegar and sometimes just water. We will feel the warmth of the sun and the chill of the winter night. But not tonight. Tonight, we are just at the beginning. The farmer is still sitting under the fig tree. The light is turning gold and then amber. The shadows are lengthening across the field. He stands up slowly, brushing the dust from his tunic. He has work to do before the sun sets. There is a cistern to check, a vine to tie, a prayer to whisper. And you are here, listening. So let us stay for just a moment longer in that golden light. Let your breath settle even deeper. There is no rush. The story will wait for you, as it has waited for thousands of years. And when you are ready, we will walk on together into the sun-baked fields of ancient Greece. So let us step forward just a few hours into the early morning of the next day. The stars are still faintly visible, fading into a sky that is turning from deep blue to a pale, dusty gray. The air is cool, almost chilly, and there is a smell of damp earth and thyme. The farmer is awake before the sun, as farmers have always been. He does not need an alarm clock. The rooster, or perhaps the donkey, or simply the habit of a lifetime, pulls him from his sleep. He lies for a moment on his bed, which is a simple mat of reeds laid on a raised platform of stone or mud brick. The mattress is stuffed with straw and dried leaves, and it is not soft by our standards, but it is warm, and it holds the shape of his body. He stretches, and his joints crack. He is not young anymore, but he is not old either. He is somewhere in the middle, a place where the body knows its limits and respects them. He pulls on his tunic, a simple rectangle of wool or linen, pinned at the shoulder, tied at the waist. He slips his feet into sandals made of leather, worn thin by years of walking. He steps outside. The house is small, with walls of sun-dried brick, whitewashed against the heat. The roof is thatch or clay tiles, and it slopes gently, so that the winter rains run off into a gutter that leads to a cistern. He walks to the cistern now, a round opening in the ground, covered by a flat stone. He lifts the stone and peers down. The water is low. He can see the dark gleam of it at the bottom, maybe 2 or 3 feet deep. He has been drawing from this cistern all summer, and it has not been replenished. He knows he must be careful. He does not panic. Panic is a luxury that a farmer cannot afford. Instead, he calculates. If the rains come in another month, as they sometimes do, he will have enough to last. If they are late, he will have to go to the spring, which is an hour's walk away, and carry water back in clay jars. That is hard work, but it is work he has done before. He has done it in his father's time and his grandfather's, and he knows that the spring has never gone dry in living memory. It might dwindle, but it does not disappear. He lowers a bucket on a rope, a bucket made of leather or baked clay, and pulls it up. The water is cool and tastes of minerals. He drinks slowly, letting it settle in his stomach. Then he pours a little on the ground, a small libation, for the nymph of the spring, for the gods of the place. It is a brief moment, a gesture of gratitude that takes no more than a few seconds, but it matters. It is the thread that connects him to the unseen. Now he must go to the fields. The sun is just beginning to show its first edge over the hills, painting the clouds in shades of pink and orange. The air is still, and the only sound is the distant braying of a donkey and the call of a bird. He walks along a path that is worn into the hillside, a path that has been used for centuries. The soil is dry and crumbles under his feet. He passes by the terraced slopes where the vines and olives stand. The leaves of the olive trees are silver green, flipping in the light. He stops at one tree. It is old, perhaps 200 years old, with a trunk that is gnarled and split. He touches the bark. This tree has seen many droughts. It has seen summers hotter than this one, winters colder than any he can remember. It has survived by going still, by withdrawing into itself, by holding its breath. He has heard stories from his grandfather about the great drought of the generation before, when the springs dried up and the livestock died, and the people had to eat the seed grain. That old tree lost its leaves, but it did not die. When the rains finally came, it put out new shoots, and within 2 years it was bearing fruit again. The olive is a patient teacher. He moves on. He has a plot of barley at the bottom of the slope, where the soil is deeper and retains more moisture. He walks along the edge of it, looking at the plants. They are short, not as tall as he would like. The heads of grain are thin. He picks one, rubs it between his palms, and blows away the chaff. The kernels are small, but they are there. They will make bread, though not as much as a good year. He does not curse the sky. He does not shake his fist at the sun. He simply notes the condition, and his mind turns to the alternatives. There are beans planted in another field, and they are doing better. Legumes are tougher than grains, and they do not need as much water. He will harvest them in a few weeks, and they will add protein to the diet, and they will help the soil by fixing nitrogen. He has also planted a patch of lentils in a shaded area near a rock outcrop where the ground stays cool. Those lentils are small and brown, but they will keep in a jar for months. He walks back to the house. His wife is awake now, and she has started the fire. The hearth is a simple circle of stones in the middle of the main room. The smoke rises through a hole in the roof. She is grinding barley flour in a stone quern, a slow, rhythmic motion that she learned as a child. The sound is a steady grating, like a soft pulse. She adds a little water to the flour, a pinch of salt, and shapes the dough into flat cakes. She places them on a clay griddle over the fire. The farmer sits on a stool, watching. He is not a man of many words. He and his wife have been together for 20 years, and they know each other's silences. He tells her about the cistern. She nods. She has been thinking about it too. She tells him that the jars of olive oil from last year are running low, and that the olives on the trees are still green. He says he will check them later. They eat the bread, dipping it in a little olive oil. The oil is green and peppery, with a taste of the hillside. It is not the bland, filtered oil we are used to. It is alive, and it coats the tongue. The bread is dense and filling. It is enough. After the meal, the farmer goes to the storage area. The house has a small room dug into the ground, called a bothrows, a pit lined with stone where he keeps the grain. He lifts the lid. The grain is in a large clay pithos, a storage jar that stands taller than his waist. He dips in a measure and sees that the level is about halfway. He calculates how many measures he will need to get through the winter. It will be tight. He will have to stretch it with beans and acorns and whatever else he can gather. Acorns. That is another survival food. The oak trees in the hills produce a crop every year, and the acorns can be ground into flour after the tannins are leached out. It is not pleasant, but it is edible. He has done it before, in the lean years. He will gather them in the autumn, and his wife will soak them in water, changing the water every day until the bitterness is gone. Then she will dry them and grind them into a powder that can be mixed with barley flour. The bread will be darker, denser, and it will keep longer. It is not a food of celebration, but it is a food of survival. He thinks also of the wild greens that grow in the spring, the horta, as they call them. Dandelion, chicory, mustard greens, all bitter and full of vitamins. The women and children go out in the early morning to collect them when the leaves are still tender. They boil them and serve them with olive oil and lemon. They are a treat after the winter, and they help to keep the body healthy. He thinks of the goats. They are up in the hills now with the youngest son, who is 10 years old. The goats are a vital part of the household. They give milk, which is made into cheese, a soft, salty cheese that can be stored in brine. They give meat, though only on special occasions. They give skins, which are used for water bags and for covering the sleeping pallets. And they give manure, which fertilizes the fields. The goats are hardy animals. They can eat things that no other animal can eat: thorny bushes, dry twigs, the leaves of the wild olive. They can go for days without water, surviving on the moisture in the plants they browse. They are the scavengers of the farm, and they keep the hillside clear of scrub, which reduces the risk of wildfire. The farmer knows that a herd of goats is like a living bank account, a reserve that can be drawn on in hard times. When the grain runs low, he can sell a goat or two at the market, or barter them for wheat. But the market is a few days' walk away, and the road is dusty and hot. He does not want to go unless he has to. The village has its own economy based on reciprocity. If a neighbor's well goes dry, the neighbor can draw water from the farmer's cistern, and in return, the farmer might get a share of the neighbor's fig harvest. It is a web of small obligations, woven over years, that holds the community together. He remembers a story his grandfather told him about a drought so severe that the village elders decided to hold a public ritual. They walked in a procession to the spring, carrying a sacred stone, and they prayed to Zeus for rain. The priest sacrificed a lamb, and they all ate the meat, and they poured libations. The next day, the clouds gathered, and the rain came. It was not a miracle, the old man said, but it was a relief. The ritual mattered because it gave the people a sense of agency, a way to act when they could not act. The farmer is not sure he believes in the gods as his ancestors did. He has seen too many prayers go unanswered. but he still performs the small rituals because they are part of the rhythm of life. He still pours a little oil on the ground. He still offers a handful of barley at the hearth. He still whispers a word of thanks when the first rain falls. Now the sun is climbing higher. The heat is beginning to press down. The cicadas have started their harsh, droning song, a sound that is almost hypnotic. The farmer walks to the shaded side of the house, where there is a bench built into the wall. He sits down. The work of the morning is done. In the heat of the afternoon, it is best to rest. He does not sleep, but he lets his mind drift. He thinks about the village. It is a small settlement, maybe 30 families. They all know each other. They all share the same anxieties. The women talk at the well when they draw water, exchanging news and recipes. The men meet in the evening at the shrine of the hero, a small stone building where they talk about the harvest and the price of oil. There is a sense of solidarity that comes from shared hardship. No one starves alone. If a family runs out of food, the others will contribute a measure of grain, a jar of olives, a piece of cheese. It is not charity, it is an investment. Next year, it might be you who is in need. The farmer remembers a winter when he was a boy, when the rains did not come for 2 years. The village had to slaughter most of the livestock. They ate the seed grain. They went to the hills and collected every edible plant they could find. They dug up roots. They trapped birds. They even ate the mice that infested the storage pits. It was a terrible time, but they survived. The village shrank, but it did not disappear. And when the rains finally returned, they planted again. That memory does not frighten him. It is just part of the story, a chapter that he can look back on with a kind of grim pride. He knows that he can endure. The body remembers how to survive, even when the mind forgets. He hears his wife singing softly inside the house. The song is an old one, about a girl who waited for her lover to return from the wars. The melody is simple, with a gentle rise and fall that matches the rhythm of her work. She is grinding more flour, or perhaps she is weaving. The sound is comforting. He closes his eyes. The minutes pass. The shadow of the house creeps across the yard. A lizard scurries along the wall. The air shimmers with heat. He is not asleep, but he is at rest. The mind is quiet. And then, somewhere in the distance, he hears it. Low rumble, like a cart rolling over cobblestones. He opens his eyes, but he does not move. He listens. The rumble comes again, this time louder, and it is followed by a faint breeze that stirs the dust. The leaves of the olive trees tremble. The wind is shifting. The air is changing. He looks to the west, where the sky is hazy, and he sees a line of clouds, gray and heavy, building on the horizon. They are still far away, but they are moving. His heart beats a little faster, but his face remains still. He will not hope too much. He has been disappointed before. The cloud might come and go. It might bring only a few drops, enough to wet the dust, not enough to fill the cistern. But he knows this. The weather has seasons of its own. The drought will not last forever. The land will drink again. The seeds will swell in the soil. The cycle will turn. He stands up slowly. He goes inside to tell his wife. She looks up from her work, and she sees something in his eyes. She knows. She goes to the door and looks out. The breeze is stronger now, cooler. The clouds are spreading across the sky. The first drops begin to fall, big and heavy, raising small puffs of dust. The farmer goes to the cistern. He lifts the cover. He watches the drops landing on the surface, the ripples spreading. He does not say a word. He just stands there, letting the rain fall on his face. It is not a miracle. It is just rain. But in that moment, it is enough. The farmer stands there for a long time, feeling the rain soak into his tunic, his hair, his skin. The drops are warm at first, then cool, and they wash the dust from his face. He does not move. He simply lets the water fall, and he listens to the sound it makes on the cistern, on the roof, on the dry earth. It is a soft, pattering sound at first, then a steady drumming, like the heartbeat of the land itself. His wife comes out of the house and stands beside him. She does not speak either. She holds her hand out, palm up, and watches the rain collect in her palm. She brings it to her lips and drinks. The water is clean and fresh. It is a small gift, but it is a gift nonetheless. The children come running out, the youngest son from the hills, the two girls from the house. They lift their faces to the sky. They laugh. The rain is a rare thing in this season, and they do not remember the last time it fell like this. They spin in circles, their arms outstretched, and they chant a little rhyme that their grandmother taught them. The goat kid bleats from the pen. The chickens shake their feathers. The whole farm stirs with a new energy, as if the rain has awakened something deep in the soil. The farmer finally stirs himself. He walks to the edge of the field where the barley is planted, and he kneels down. He presses his fingers into the earth. It is still hard, but it is no longer cracked. The surface has softened, and the water is beginning to penetrate. He can smell the damp soil, the rich, loamy scent that promises growth. He can already imagine the green shoots that will appear in a few days if the rain continues. But he knows better than to assume. The rain may stop. The clouds may disperse. This may be only a brief reprieve, a single shower in a long dry season. He has seen it before, a storm that raises hope, then disappears, leaving the land even more parched than before. He must not let hope carry him away. He stands up and goes back to the cistern. He checks the depth gauge, a simple stick marked with notches. The water level has risen by only a finger's width. It will take many more rains like this to fill the cistern. But it is a start. It is a beginning. He goes inside, where his wife has already begun to prepare the evening meal. She is making a stew of beans and wild greens, flavored with a little olive oil and a pinch of salt. She has also set out some of the dried figs and a piece of the goat cheese. It is a simple meal, but it feels like a feast tonight. The children are still outside, playing in the rain. The youngest son has brought the goats down from the hills, and they are huddled under the overhang of the roof, their bells clinking softly. The farmer can hear the gentle sound of their chewing. He sits down on a stool by the hearth. The fire is small, just enough to cook by. He watches the flames, and he lets his mind wander to the future. The next few days will be critical. If the rain continues, he will sow the rest of the barley and the emmer. He will plant the lentils. He will set out the grapevines he has been saving in pots. He will do all the things that need to be done, and he will work from dawn until dark, and he will not complain. But if the rain stops, he will have to make other plans. He will slaughter one of the goats, the old one that no longer gives much milk. He will dry the meat in strips to be eaten in the winter. He will use the fat for cooking and for making soap. He will use the skin for a new water bag because the old one is leaking. He will also gather the acorns as he planned. He will send the children to collect the wild greens, the chicory and the dandelion that will grow lush after the rain. He will dig up the roots of the wild reed, which can be ground into a starchy flour, though it is poor fare. He will do all the things that a farmer does when the harvest fails. But for now, he sits by the fire, and he feels the warmth on his face. He is tired, but it is a good tired, the tired of a day that was not wasted. He reaches for a fig, and he bites into it. The sweetness fills his mouth. His wife brings him a cup of water mixed with a little wine. He sips it slowly. The wine is homemade from grapes that grew on the hillside last year. It is a rough, young wine, not the smooth stuff that the rich men drink in the city, but it is good enough for him. It warms his throat and his belly. He thinks about the city. He has been there only a few times when he was younger. It was a bewildering place, full of noise and crowds and people who spoke quickly. The streets were narrow and dirty, and the buildings seemed to lean over him. He did not like it. He preferred the farm, where the sky was wide and the air was clean. He preferred the slow rhythm of the seasons. He looks at his wife. She has a shawl over her head now, and she is stirring the stew. Her hands are rough and calloused, but they are gentle. She is humming the same song she was humming earlier. The melody is like a thread that weaves through the day, tying one moment to the next. The children come in, wet and laughing. The youngest son has a frog in his hands. He found it in the puddle by the gate. He shows it to his father, who nods and smiles. The frog is a good sign. It means the water is staying. The farmer tells his son to put the frog back in the puddle because the frog is a friend to the farm. The son does so carefully and then comes back to the hearth. He sits on the floor, close to the fire, and he leans against his father's leg. The other children sit nearby. The goat kid has come into the house as well, and it curls up in a corner on a pile of straw. The stew is ready. The wife ladles it into bowls, and they eat. The broth is savory, flavored with the wild greens and the beans. There is a crust of bread to dip into it. They eat in silence, but it is a comfortable silence, the silence of people who know each other well. After the meal, the farmer steps outside again. The rain has stopped. The clouds are breaking up, and there are patches of clear sky where the stars are beginning to appear. The air is clean and cool. The ground is dark with moisture. He can hear the water dripping from the roof, a gentle, steady sound. He walks to the cistern and lifts the cover again. The water level has risen a little more. He estimates that he has gained about a day's worth of water, maybe 2. It is not enough, but it is something. He replaces the cover. He looks up at the stars. They are bright after the rain. He can see the constellation Orion, the hunter, rising in the east. He has a connection to these stars. They are the same stars his grandfather looked at, and his grandfather's grandfather. They are part of the family. He thinks about the gods again. He does not pray often, but sometimes, when the night is quiet and the world is still, he feels a need to speak. He murmurs a few words to the sky. He thanks the rain for coming. He asks for more. He does not expect an answer. It is just a way of expressing hope. He goes back inside. The children are already asleep, curled up on their pallets. The goat kid is asleep too. His wife is waiting for him. They lie down together on the broad bed that takes up one corner of the room. The bed is made of ropes and straw, but it is soft enough. He listens to the night sounds. The chorus of frogs has begun, a loud, rhythmic croaking that fills the darkness. It is a joyful sound, the sound of life returning. The crickets are singing too. The air is cool and damp. He closes his eyes. He feels his wife's breathing beside him, slow and even. He feels the warmth of the house around him. He feels the tiredness in his bones. He thinks about tomorrow. He will wake early before the sun. He will check the cistern again. He will look at the sky. He will decide what to do. But for now, there is only this moment, this peace. He falls asleep, and his dreams are full of rain. The morning comes with a pale light filtering through the doorway. The farmer wakes slowly. He is still tired, but there is a sense of anticipation in his chest. He gets up and steps outside. The ground is damp under his feet. The air is fresh, and the sky is a soft gray. He goes to the cistern. The water level has risen more than he expected. The rain must have continued after he fell asleep, a light drizzle that lasted through the night. The gauge shows a gain of several fingers. He feels a surge of hope, but he pushes it down. He goes to the field. The barley is beginning to show a hint of green, just a faint tinge at the tips of the stems. It is too early to tell if it will recover, but it is a sign. He kneels and touches a leaf. It is soft and supple. He walks up the hill to the edge of the property. The goats are already browsing, their bells ringing. The air is full of the scent of wet earth and wet leaves. He sits on a rock and looks out over the valley. The rain has changed the landscape. The colors are deeper. The hills are no longer brown and dusty. There is a greenish tinge, the beginning of renewal. He thinks about the next months. If the rains continue at this pace, the harvest will be good. The barley and emmer will ripen in late spring. The grapes will swell on the vines. The olives will grow fat on the trees. He will have wine and oil and grain to last the year. He will even have some to sell at the market. But he knows he cannot rely on hope. He must prepare for the possibility that this is just a temporary respite. He will still gather the acorns. He will still cut back on the grain rations, just a little, to make them last longer. He will still dry some of the fruit. He will still watch the goats carefully, ready to sell them if the drought returns. He stays on the rock for a long time, watching the clouds drift overhead. They are moving slowly from west to east. There's a patch of blue sky to the south. The weather is uncertain, as it always is. He hears his wife calling him for breakfast. He goes down the hill, his steps careful on the slippery grass. The house is warm. She has made a porridge of barley and milk, sweetened with a little honey. He eats it slowly, savoring each spoonful. The children are already busy. The girls are collecting the eggs from the chickens. The boy is feeding the goats. The goat kid is following him everywhere, bleating softly. The farmer finishes his breakfast and goes to the shed. He has a project in mind. He has been thinking about building a new storage pit for the grain, one that is deeper and better sealed against moisture and rodents. The old pit is shallow and has been used for many years. The sides are crumbling. He needs to dig a new one before the harvest comes. He finds his shovel, a simple wooden blade with a metal tip. He chooses a spot near the house where the ground is dry and well drained. He begins to dig. The soil is soft after the rain, and the shovel cuts through it easily. The work is steady, rhythmic. He falls into a pattern: lift, thrust, lift, toss. The pile of earth grows beside the pit. He works for an hour, then another. The sun climbs, but the air is still cool. The clouds keep the heat at bay. He takes a break, drinks some water, and continues. By midday, the pit is deep enough. He lines it with stones, which he collects from a pile at the edge of the field. He makes a tight seal with clay. He covers the bottom with a layer of straw. When it is done, he stands back and looks at his work. It is a small thing, but it is a good thing. It will keep the grain safe. He goes to the house for lunch. His wife has made flatbread, and there is cheese and olives. The children are already eating. The goat kid has managed to steal a piece of bread, and the boy is chasing it around the yard. The farmer laughs. It is the first time he has laughed in weeks. It feels good. He sits down to eat. His wife sits beside him. She tells him that one of the goats is limping. He will look at it this afternoon. She also tells him that the vine leaves are beginning to show signs of mildew from all the moisture. He will have to treat them with a mixture of sulfur and lime if he can find the sulfur. It is a small problem, but problems have a way of multiplying. He finishes his lunch and goes to check the goat. The goat is an old one with a gnarled horn and missing teeth. Her leg is swollen. He examines it carefully. It might be a thorn or a twist. He cleans the wound and applies a poultice of crushed herbs. He will keep her in the pen for a few days to let her rest. He then goes to the vine. The mildew is there, a white powder on the leaves. He mixes a solution of sulfur and water, and he sprays it on the leaves, careful to cover both sides. It is a tedious job, but it must be done. Without treatment, the grapes will rot before they ripen. He works until the light begins to fade. The sky is still gray, but there is no more rain. The clouds are thin. The air is still. He goes back to the house. The children have gathered wood for the fire. His wife is cooking. He washes his hands and face at the well, and he sits down to rest. The evening is quiet. They eat again, the same simple stew. The fire crackles. The goat kid is asleep in the corner. The farmer thinks about the day. It was a good day. He did the work. He made a small improvement to the farm. He addressed a problem. He laughed. He felt the rain on his face. It was enough. He looks at his wife, and he sees that she is tired too. She has worked all day, grinding flour, cooking, cleaning, tending the children, the goats, the chickens. She does not complain. She just does her work day after day. He reaches out and takes her hand. She looks up, surprised. He holds it for a moment, then lets go. They do not need words. The night is cool. They go to bed early. The farmer lies awake for a while, listening to the frogs. They are still singing, a loud and joyful chorus. He thinks about the cycles of life, the dry and the wet, the planting and the harvest, the birth and the death. It all goes on, whether he is here or not. But he is here, and he is part of it. He falls asleep, and his dreams are calm. The next day, the rain does not come. The sky is clear, and the sun is hot. The ground begins to dry again. By midday, the mud has turned to dust. The farmer checks the cistern. The water level is still good, but it is not rising. He will need to ration carefully. He goes to the field. The barley is still green, but it is not growing as fast as he hoped. The soil is already beginning to crack again. He feels a flicker of anxiety, but he pushes it down. He knows that this is how it goes. The rain comes and goes. He cannot control it. He focuses on the work. He prunes the vines. He weeds the vegetable patch. He repairs a hole in the fence. He does the small tasks that keep the farm alive. The days pass. Sometimes it rains. Sometimes it does not. The barrel fills slowly, but not enough. The barley survives, but it does not thrive. The grapes are still small, the olives still green. He starts to gather the acorns. The children help. They go into the hills with bags, collecting the fallen acorns. The goats watch them with curious eyes. He soaks the acorns in the stream, changing the water every day. The bitterness leaches out. His wife grinds them into flour. The bread is dark and dense, but it is food. He also slaughters the old goat. It is a sad task, but necessary. The meat is dried. The skin is tanned. The bones are used for broth. The family eats the goat meat in small portions, mixed with barley and greens. It is tough, but it is nourishing. The summer drags on. The heat is thick. The cicadas sing all day. The farmer rises before dawn to work in the cool of the morning. By noon, he is resting in the shade. He watches the sky constantly. The clouds come and go. Some bring rain, some do not. It is a waiting game, and he has learned to be patient. One evening, he walks up the hill alone. The sun is setting, a red ball in the haze. He looks at the farm below. It is small, but it is his. He has built it with his own hands, year by year. He thinks about the ancestors. They did the same work, faced the same challenges. They survived. He will too. The land endures, and the people endure with it. He stays until the stars appear. The frogs are quiet tonight, but the crickets sing. The air is still. He goes back down the hill. His wife is waiting at the door. She smiles. He steps into the warmth of the house. The fire is low. The children are sleeping. The goat kid is now a young doe. She bleats softly. He sits down. His wife hands him a cup of wine. He drinks it slowly. Tomorrow will be another day. There will be work, worry, hope. But for now, there is this moment. He closes his eyes. The sleep comes gently, like a tide. The sleep comes gently, like a tide pulling out to sea. and the farmer drifts into a quiet darkness. His dreams are not of the fields or the goats or the worries of the day. They are of a river he knew as a boy, a wide and slow-moving river that ran through his grandfather's land. He remembers sitting on the bank, watching the water slide over smooth stones, feeling the cool mist on his face. In the dream, he is young again, and his grandfather is beside him, saying nothing, just sitting and watching the river with him. The dream fades slowly, and the farmer wakes to the sound of a rooster crowing. The light is gray and soft through the cracks in the wall. He lies still for a moment, listening. The rooster crows again, closer this time. It is a reliable sound, one of the few sounds he can count on. He gets up. The house is cool. His wife is already awake, stirring the embers in the hearth. She looks at him and nods. No words are needed. He goes outside. The sky is a pale blue, very clear. The air smells of earth and dew. It is going to be a hot day. He can already feel the heat building, even at this early hour. He walks down to the cistern and checks the water level. It is a little lower than yesterday. He measures it with a stick, marking the height with his finger. The numbers are all in his head. He knows exactly how much water they have, exactly how many days it might last if there is no more rain. He does the math. It is not terrible, but it is not good. If they are careful, if they ration strictly, they can stretch the water until the first autumn rains. That is the hope. But hope is not a guarantee. He goes back inside. His wife has made a simple breakfast of barley porridge with a little honey and some dried figs. The children are still sleeping. He eats quietly, thinking about the day ahead. There are many tasks. The vines need another treatment for the mildew. The vegetable patch needs weeding. The fence around the goat pen needs mending. And there is the question of the water. He decides to check the well. There is an old well at the edge of the property, one that his grandfather dug many years ago. It is shallow and often dries up in summer, but it might have some water now after the recent rains. He takes a rope and a bucket and walks to the well. It is a small opening in the ground, covered with a flat stone. Moves the stone and looks down. The darkness is deep. He lowers the bucket, hears it hit the bottom with a dull thud and then a splash. There is water down there, not much, but some. He pulls the bucket up. It is about a quarter full. The water is clear, but it has a slightly metallic taste from the minerals in the soil. It is drinkable, but not as good as the cistern water. He makes a note to come back later with a longer rope. If the well has water, it might help them stretch their supplies. He goes back to the farm. The children are awake now. They are chasing the young doe around the yard. The little goat is fast, and the children are laughing. It is a good sound. He tells them to help with the chores. They groan a little, but they do it. The boy goes to feed the chickens. The girls collect the eggs and bring them inside. He works on the fence. It is a simple repair, just replacing a few broken branches and tightening the rope. The goats watch him with mild interest, chewing on whatever they can find. The sun climbs higher. The heat becomes thick and pressing. He works slowly, taking breaks in the shade. He drinks water often, careful not to waste it. By midday, he is tired. He goes inside for lunch. The flatbread is soft and warm. There is cheese and olives and the last of the dried goat meat. The children are quiet, chewing slowly. The heat has taken their energy too. After lunch, the farmer lies down for a short rest. He does not sleep, but he closes his eyes and lets his body relax. The cicadas are loud outside, a steady buzz that fills the air. He thinks about the ancient stories. His mother used to tell him about the gods who controlled the weather. Zeus was the god of the sky who sent the rain. Demeter was the goddess of the harvest who made the crops grow. There was a story about a time when the rain stopped, and the people prayed to Demeter, and they offered her the first fruits of the harvest. But the rains still did not come. And then there was a story about a farmer who prayed to Zeus for a whole year. And just when he was about to give up, the rains came, and his fields flourished. He is not sure if he believes the stories, but they comfort him. There is a rhythm to them, a pattern that matches the seasons. He likes to think of the gods as beings who understand the struggle, who have seen it all before. He gets up feeling refreshed. He goes to the vegetable patch. The beans are looking weak. The leaves are curling and the soil is dry. He fetches a bucket of water from the cistern and waters them carefully, just enough to keep them alive. He does the same for the onions and the garlic. They are hardier, but they still need water. He works through the afternoon. The sun is relentless. His shadow is short. The ground is hot. He finishes the watering and goes to check the vine leaves. The mildew is still there, but it is not as bad as before. The sulfur treatment has helped. He also notices that he can see the grapes forming now. They are small and green, but they are there. A good omen. He looks at the sky. There are clouds in the distance, but they are thin and high. They do not look like rain clouds. He feels a sense of patience settling in him. It is a different feeling from before, less anxious, more grounded. He has done what he can. The rest is up to the earth and the weather. Evening comes slowly. The light fades to gold, then to gray. He sits on the hillside and watches the sun set. The clouds catch the last light and turn pink and purple. It is beautiful. He goes back down. The family eats stew again, this time with the last of the fresh greens. The bread is made with acorn flour and barley. It is dense but sustaining. They sit by the fire. His wife tells a story about a trickster fox who stole eggs from a farmer, and the farmer chased the fox all across the hills and finally caught it, but the fox was too clever and escaped again. It is an old story, one she heard from her grandmother. The children listen with wide eyes, even though they have heard it many times before. The farmer smiles. He watches the firelight flicker on their faces. Life continues like this, day after day. Summer reaches its peak. The heat is intense. The water is scarce. But they manage, they adapt, they ration. They find small joys. He learns to read the signs of the land. He watches the birds. When they gather near the stream, he knows it means they have found water. He watches the ants. When they build their mounds high, it means the rain is coming. He watches the sky. When the clouds form in a certain way, he knows it will rain in a few hours. The ancient Greeks had a deep connection to the land. The farmer has learned this from his father and his grandfather. They taught him to read the stars, to feel the wind, to listen to the sounds of the night. One night, he wakes suddenly. The wind has changed. It is blowing from the south, and it carries a scent of moisture. He gets up and goes outside. The sky is overcast. The stars are hidden. He waits. He stands in the dark, listening. The wind gusts. The leaves rustle. And then there is a sound, a soft pitter-patter that grows louder. Rain. Finally, rain. He stays out in the first few drops, feeling them land on his face. They are cool and gentle, a small miracle. The rain falls steadily, soaking the ground, filling the cistern, spreading with joy over the parched earth. He lets it fall on him. He lifts his face to the sky. The rain falls for an hour, then another, a steady, nourishing visit that washes away the dust and the worry. His wife joins him, wrapped in a shawl. They stand together, watching the rain. The children wake up and run outside, laughing, splashing in the puddles. The young doe bleats and jumps around as if feeling the gratitude in the air. Life returns. The barley green explodes upward in the days that follow. The leathery vine leaves unfurl with a sudden vigor. The olives seem fatter. The beans produce yellow blooms. The farmer works with renewed energy. He mends the irrigation channels. He builds a small dam in the stream to collect more water. He plants a second crop of vegetables. The harvest comes in late summer. The barley is thin, but it is enough. The olives are green, but they will be pressed for oil. The grapes are small, but they will make wine. They celebrate with a small feast. The family eats roasted goat, the last of the dried meat from the old goat. There is fresh bread, made with barley and a little wheat, and a bit of olive oil. The wine made from the previous year's harvest is tart, but it is wine. Before eating, the farmer lets a few drops of wine fall to the ground as a small offering. He does not make a show of it, but it feels right to do. The children eat until they are full. The young doe bleats and begs for scraps. His wife smiles. The next day, he begins the winter preparations. The storage pit he dug earlier is now filled with grain. He covers it with a heavy stone, sealing it with clay. The goat's dried meat is stored in the rafters. The wine and oil are packed in clay jars. He makes sure the roof is patched. The winter rains will come soon, and he cannot afford leaks. The days become shorter. The air becomes cool. The mornings are crisp. The fields begin to settle into their dormant sleep. It's a time for rest and renewal. The farmer spends time with his wife and children. He tells stories from his childhood about the wide river. His wife tells stories from her family. The children laugh. The goat kid has grown into a young doe with a strong and certain step. It is a quiet winter, full of deep rest and simple routines. The rains come. The cistern fills and overflows. The land drinks everything. One evening, he stands at the door of the house, looking out at the misty hills. He thinks back on the summer, on the heat and the drought, and the hard work and the waiting. He thinks about the rain that came just in time. This is an old story, but it feels like his own. He goes back inside, to the warmth, to the fire that his wife is tending. and to the old tales that never seem to end. He goes back inside, to the warmth, to the fire that his wife is tending, and to the old tales that never seem to end. Flames crackle softly, casting long shadows on the mud brick walls. The children are already half asleep, curled up on their mats, but their eyes still glimmer in the firelight. His wife shifts the logs with a stick, coaxing a brighter glow. The farmer settles onto a stool, feeling the heat seep into his tired bones. Outside, the rain continues to fall, a steady, gentle sound that wraps around the house like a blanket. His wife begins another story, one he has heard many times but never tires of. It is about a farmer named Glaucus who lived many generations ago in a different valley at the foot of a great mountain. Glaucus was known for his patience and his deep understanding of the land. One year, the drought was so severe that even the oldest olive trees began to shed their leaves. The springs dried up. The streams became dust. The other farmers panicked. They prayed to Zeus and begged for rain. They sacrificed goats and poured libations, but nothing changed. Glaucus did not panic. He walked his field slowly, touching the soil, feeling its dryness, its stillness. He noticed that the ants were still moving, busy and purposeful. He watched where they went. They led him to a patch of ground near a large rock. He dug there, and after a few feet, he found a small underground spring, a hidden vein of water that had been there all along. He dug a narrow channel to guide the water to his crops. It was not much, but it was enough. The other farmers thought he was lucky, but the farmer, sitting by his own fire, understands that Glaucus was not lucky. He was observant. He understood that the earth keeps secrets only for those who pay attention. The farmer looks at his hands, calloused and cracked. He knows those secrets too, or at least some of them. He learned them from his father, who learned from his father, and so on, back through the long chain of years. The fire pops. A child murmurs in sleep. The farmer's wife finishes the story and falls silent. The only sounds are the rain and the fire. The farmer breathes deeply. The tension in his shoulders eases. He thinks about the spring hidden under the rock, about the water that is still flowing somewhere beneath his own fields, waiting to be found. He does not need to find it now. The winter rains have come. The cistern is full, but the knowledge is there, like a seed. Winter settles in fully. The days are short and gray. The rain falls almost every day, but it is a soft rain, a drenching rain that soaks the ground and fills the gullies. The farmer spends most of his time indoors. He repairs tools. He sharpens the scythe. He weaves new baskets from reeds. His wife spins wool and weaves cloth. The children help with small tasks, gathering firewood, sorting dried herbs, feeding the young doe. The young doe has grown strong. She follows the children everywhere. She has a habit of nudging their elbows when she wants attention, and they laugh and scratch her ears. The farmer watches them play. He thinks about the future, about the spring when the fields will need to be plowed again. He wonders if the young doe will bear kids next year. That would be a blessing. More milk, more meat, more hides. Sometimes, the neighbor who had been so worried before comes to visit. They sit by the fire and talk about the weather, the crops, the prices at the market. The neighbor seems calmer now. The rains have restored his hope. He talks about planting a larger field of barley next spring. The farmer nods, but he does not share that enthusiasm. He knows that the weather can turn again, that a single good winter does not promise a good summer. He has learned to be cautious, to plan for the worst while hoping for the best. The neighbor also brings news from the village. There had been a festival to Demeter, with songs and offerings. The priest had declared that the goddess was pleased with the rains. The farmers had celebrated with a feast, and the wine had flowed freely. The farmer had not gone. He prefers his own hearth, his own small rituals. But he listens and he smiles. It is good to hear that others are feeling joyful. The winter deepens. The days become shorter, darker. The fire is kept burning almost all the time now. The farmer rises before dawn and goes to check the livestock, a few chickens, the young doe, and a pig that he is fattening for the winter solstice. The pig grunts contentedly, rooting through the leftovers. The chickens peck at scattered grain. The farmer gives them fresh water from the cistern. The water is cold, clean, and clear. He has time to think, now that the work is lighter. He thinks about the ancient ways, the knowledge passed down through generations. He remembers a story his grandfather told him about the old farmers who built terraces on the hillsides. Those terraces still stand in some places, stone walls that hold the soil and slow the water. They were built carefully, stone by stone, by people who understood that land is a gift that must be preserved. He wonders if he should build terraces on the steepest part of his own field. It would be a lot of work, but it would prevent erosion and capture rain. He files the thought away for spring. He thinks about the gods too, but not with any urgency. He feels a quiet gratitude for the rain, for the fertile soil, for the health of his family. He does not need to name a god to feel that gratitude. It is enough to feel it, to let it rest in his chest like a warm ember. One evening, a traveler passes by. He is an old man with a long beard and a staff. He asks for shelter from the rain. The farmer invites him in. The traveler shares news from other valleys, from the coast, from the islands. He says that farther south, the drought was even worse. Some villages had been abandoned. The people had moved closer to the sea, where the water was more reliable. Farmer listens, feeling the same weight he always feels. The land is not kind to everyone. The traveler also brings a small book, a scroll of papyrus. He says it contains the writings of a philosopher named Hesiod about farming and life. The farmer can barely read, but his wife can, a little, because her father had taught her. She reads a few lines aloud by the fire. The words speak of working in rhythm with the seasons, of waiting for the right time to plant and harvest. The advice feels old and true. The farmer nods. It is comforting to know that others long ago had faced the same challenges and written down their wisdom. The traveler stays for 2 nights. On the 3rd morning, the rain stops. The sky clears to a pale blue. The traveler continues on his way, and the farmer watches him disappear over the hill. He feels a slight emptiness. The company was good, but the solitude is also good. He returns to his work. Spring arrives slowly, almost imperceptibly. The days lengthen. The air warms. The first green shoots appear along the field edges. Wild grasses, tender herbs, the early bulbs of onions and garlic that had been planted in autumn. The farmer walks through his field, feeling the soil crumble under his sandals. It is moist, dark, and rich. He kneels and picks up a handful, bringing it to his nose. It smells of earth and rain and life. It is a good smell, a smell of possibility. He begins the spring plowing. He uses a simple wooden plow, pulled by the old donkey. The donkey is stubborn but reliable. Together, they turn the soil, breaking up the clods, preparing the bed for the new seed. The farmer sows barley and a little wheat, along with lentils and chickpeas. He plants beans around the edges. He sets out young vine shoots that he had saved from pruning. He prunes the olive trees, careful to cut only the dead branches. The work is hard, but the rhythm is comforting. The sun is warm but not harsh. The birds return, singing from the treetops. The young doe, now a full goat, follows the farmer around, nibbling at tender shoots. He talks to her sometimes, telling her about the day's work. She bleats in reply, as if understanding. The family plants a small herb garden near the door. Oregano, thyme, mint, dill. The women use these herbs to season the food, and they dry them for winter. The farmer also plants a few poppies because the flowers are pretty. It is a small luxury, a bit of beauty for its own sake. The spring rain is different from the winter rain. It is softer, more frequent, but not as heavy. The cistern stays full. The stream runs again, clear and cold. The farmer builds a small catch basin to divert some of the water to the vegetable patch. It is an old trick, one that his grandfather taught him. Use gravity, not effort. Let the water do the work. He also builds a simple stone enclosure around the spring near the rock, the one that had been a hidden vein. He clears the debris, deepens the pool, and lines it with flat stones. It becomes a reliable water source for the driest days of summer. The water is not abundant, but it is clean and steady. He feels proud of this small accomplishment. As spring turns to early summer, the fields are lush. The barley stands knee-high, swaying in the gentle breeze. The vine leaves are dark and full. The olive tree drops its blossoms, and tiny fruits begin to swell. The vegetables are thriving: tomatoes, cucumbers, cabbages, leeks. The goat gives milk, rich and creamy. The children drink it fresh. The farmer and his wife make cheese with some of it, using a simple rennet from a calf's stomach. Life is abundant, but the farmer does not take it for granted. He knows that the heat will come again, the drought will return, the hungry season will knock on the door. So he stores, he saves, he plans. He builds an extra storage pit, lining it with stones and twigs. He dries herbs and beans. He smokes some of the goat meat. He says nothing, but the careful movements of his hands speak for him. Preparation is a form of respect. One evening, when the air is warm and the first stars appear, he sits outside alone. The family has gone to bed. The fire is reduced to embers. He looks up at the stars, the same stars his ancestors looked at, the same ones the traveler had looked at, the same ones that had guided Glaucus to the hidden spring. The constellations shift slowly, telling the time of year. He knows them by name: the bear, the Pleiades, the hunter. They are not gods, but they feel like friends. He thinks about his children. They will grow up and maybe find their own fields, their own springs. They will remember the stories, the smell of the damp earth, the taste of olive oil. They will carry the knowledge, even if they do not always use it. That is enough. That is the real harvest. The cicadas begin to sing, a long, slow drone that rises and falls. Summer has arrived. The farmer stands, stretches, and goes inside. The house is dark and quiet. His wife is breathing softly. The children are curled up. He lies down on his mat, staring at the ceiling. He is tired, but it is a good tired, a full tired. He closes his eyes. And there, in the quiet of the night, he drifts off to sleep, just as the ancient farmers did in their mud brick houses, beneath the same stars, with the same rhythms of the earth moving around them. The drought would come again. The rains would fall again. The cycle is eternal. But for now, there is peace. There is rest. There is the steady heartbeat of the land, beating slowly, softly, under everything. The fire settles into ash. The wind whispers through the cracks. The world slips into a long, dark stillness. And that is enough. That is all there ever was, and all there ever needs to be. And that is enough. That is all there ever was, and all there ever needs to be. The night deepens, and the farmer's breathing becomes slow and even. The last ember in the hearth glows faintly, a tiny orange eye that blinks and dims. Outside, the wind softens to a whisper, brushing through the olive leaves, carrying the scent of damp earth and wild thyme. The moon has risen, thin and pale, casting a silver light across the fields. The stone walls, the terraces, the cistern, the young vines, all are bathed in that soft, ancient glow. The world holds its breath, and the farmer dreams. He dreams of water. Not a flood, not a storm, but a slow, steady trickle that runs through his land, through every furrow, every root, every stone. He dreams of his grandfather standing at the edge of the field, nodding, saying nothing, just watching. The old man holds a handful of soil, lets it fall through his fingers. The grains catch the light. The dream is simple, quiet, like the memory of a memory. He wakes once in the night. The house is completely still. The fire has gone out. He listens for the wind, for any sound, and hears only the slow, deep breathing of his wife beside him. He turns onto his side, pulls the wool blanket closer, and slips back into that dark, weightless place. The next morning comes gently. The sun rises late, filtered through a thin veil of clouds. The air is cool, almost cool enough for a second blanket. The farmer wakes slowly, his body still soft with sleep. He lies still for a moment, letting the day arrive without rush. He can hear the goat bleating softly outside, waiting to be milked. The children are already stirring, their voices low, murmuring in the other room. He gets up and walks outside. The sky is a pale gray, the kind of sky that promises a gentle day. The hills are wrapped in mist, the tops of the olive trees barely visible. The air smells of wet stone and green leaves. The field is quiet, the soil still damp from the rain last night. The vegetables sparkle with droplets. The cistern is full, almost to the brim. The farmer checks the spring near the rock, the one he had lined with stones. The water is clear and cold, a slow, steady flow that will last through the summer. He cups his hands and drinks. The water tastes of stone and earth, of patience. He milks the goat, sitting on a low stool, his head resting against the goat's warm flank. The milk streams into the wooden bucket with a rhythmic hiss. The goat seems content, chewing slowly, her eyes half closed. The farmer speaks to her in a low voice, telling her she is a good goat, a fine goat, the best goat in the valley. She flicks an ear, but does not move. Inside, his wife has built a small fire. She is boiling water for tea, dried mint, and chamomile from the herb garden. The children sit at the table, their faces sleepy, their fingers tracing lines in the wood. The farmer pours milk from the bucket into a clay jar, sets it aside to settle. The tea is poured, and steam rises into the cool morning. They drink in silence, the way families do when the day has not yet found its shape. After breakfast, the farmer takes his pruning knife and walks to the olive tree. It stands on a slight rise, its trunk gnarled and twisted, thick with age. He runs his hand over the bark, rough and warm. He trims a few dead branches, slices away a sucker growing at the base. The cuts are clean, deliberate. He has done this 100 times. The tree will respond with stronger growth, more fruit. It is a conversation, not a command. The morning passes slowly. He leads the donkey to the stream for water. He checks the bean plants for pests. He pulls a few weeds that have crept into the lentil patch. The sun climbs higher, but it is not harsh. The mist burns off, revealing the sharp outlines of the hills. The sky turns a clear, pale blue. A few birds circle overhead, calling to one another in long, looping cries. At midday, he rests in the shade of the olive tree. He chews a piece of dried fig, letting the sweetness dissolve on his tongue. His wife brings him a cup of watered wine, cool from the storage jar. She sits beside him, her back against the trunk. They do not speak. The goat wanders over and lies down in the sun. The children are playing in the field, running through the barley, their laughter thin and bright. The farmer thinks about the harvest that will come in a few months. The barley will turn golden. The grapes will purple on the vine. The olives will swell and then ripen, black and oily. He will press some for oil, cure others in brine. The vegetables will be dried, pickled, stored in jars. The goat will have kids, and there will be milk and cheese for another year. The storage pits will be filled, the jars lined up, the seed corn set aside for the next planting. He thinks about the hunger that has come before and the hunger that will come again. It is not something to fear, but something to know, like the shape of a field, like the scent of rain. It is part of the world, part of the rhythm. The farmer does not fight it. He works with it. He builds his terraces, digs his cisterns, saves his seeds. He pays attention to the clouds, the wind, the behavior of birds. He listens to the stories of travelers, to the old sayings his grandfather passed down. He does not need to be rich or famous. He needs only to be ready. The afternoon brings a light breeze. The farmer returns to the field to plant a second batch of beans, late enough to avoid the spring frost, but early enough to catch the last of the rains. The soil is soft, easy to work. He marks rows with a stick, drops seeds one by one, covers them with the palm of his hand. Each seed is a promise. He does not hurry. The sun begins its descent. The light turns golden, then orange. The shadows lengthen. The air cools again. The farmer washes his hands in the stream, splashing water on his face. He feels the day's work in his shoulders, his back, the heavy satisfaction of a body that has moved with purpose. Supper is simple: a thick soup of beans and herbs, a piece of bread dipped in olive oil, a slice of cheese. The children eat quickly, their bowls empty in minutes. The wife tells a story about a fox she saw this morning, sneaking along the edge of the field, probably after mice. The farmer laughs quietly. The goat bleats from her shed. The fire crackles. After supper, the farmer steps outside again. The sky is deep blue, fading to indigo in the east. The first stars appear, one by one, like small candles lit across a vast temple. The farmer stands with his hands in his pockets, looking up. He tries to find the constellations, but they are not all visible yet. He waits. The Pleiades will rise later, before dawn. He knows that. He has known it since he was a child, watching the sky with his father. He does not pray. He simply stands, breathing, present. The world is not a problem to be solved. It is a place to be lived in, to be cared for. The ancient farmers knew this. They did not conquer the drought or defeat the hungry season. They survived it, lived through it, and passed on what they had learned. The knowledge is still here, in the soil, in the stones, in the tilt of the roof. It is not written in books, except for the old scroll the traveler brought, but it is written in the land. He thinks about his children. One day, they will stand in this field or another and look up at the same stars. They will feel the same wind, smell the same earth. They will make their own choices, build their own wells, plant their own seeds. But they will also carry this memory: the sound of the goat's bell, the taste of the oil, the feel of the rain on their face. And that will be enough. The farmer turns and goes inside. The fire has burned down to coals. The children are already asleep. His wife is mending a tear in a tunic, her needle moving slowly in the dim light. He sits down across from her, picks up a piece of wood he has been shaping into a new handle for the plow. They work in silence, the two of them, in the quiet of the house. The coals glow. The needle catches the light. The shavings curl and fall. And that is the way the ancient farmers lived, not in great heroic deeds, but in small, careful acts repeated season after season, generation after generation. They endured not because they had more strength or magic than we do, but because they paid attention. They knew the land, the sky, the body. They knew when to wait and when to act. They built for the long run, stone by stone, seed by seed. They held the memory of the old ways, the hidden springs, the forgotten terraces, and they passed it on in stories told by firelight, in the grip of a hand on a plow, in the echo of a name whispered to a child. And so it goes, the slow river of time, carrying the knowledge downstream. We are all part of that river. Every gardener, every farmer, every person who plants a tree knowing they may never sit in its shade. Everyone who digs a well in dry ground, who saves a jar of water, who watches the sky for a sign of rain. These are the survivors, the unseen ones, the quiet heart of the world. The farmer finishes shaping the handle. He sets it aside. He yawns, stretches. The wife puts down her mending. They bank the fire, cover the coals with ash. They blow out the lamp. The house falls into darkness, into stillness. The farmer lies down, his body heavy and warm. He listens to the wind outside, the distant call of an owl. He breathes in the smell of the earth that seeps through the walls. He lets go. He sleeps, and the stars turn above him. The earth turns beneath him. The seasons turn around him, endless and patient. The drought will return. The rain will come again. The hunger will knock, but the door will hold, because the farmer has prepared. Because the farmer is part of the rhythm. Because the farmer, like all the farmers before him, knows that the land does not ask for perfection. It asks only for attention, for care, for the steady hands that plant the seed and the quiet heart that waits. And that is enough. That is all there ever was, and all there ever needs to be.